Most men assume their value increases automatically with age. It doesn't. What increases is potential, and potential without execution is just aging. I'm going to explain how sexual marketplace value actually operates, not how people wish it operated. This isn't about fairness. This is about pattern recognition. Men and women enter the dating market with completely different assets. The confusion comes from assuming those assets depreciate at the same rate. They don't. And by the time most people understand this mechanism, they've already made decisions based on the wrong timeline. Let's start with what determines male sexual marketplace value. It's not age itself. That's the first misunderstanding. Age is only valuable if it comes with accumulation, status, resources, physical presence, social calibration. These things compound. A man at 35 who hasn't built anything isn't suddenly more attractive than he was at 25. He's just older. The marketplace doesn't reward time. It rewards what you did with it. This is why male value has upward potential. Everything that makes a man attractive in the mating market can be constructed. Fitness can be built. Status can be earned. Social intelligence can be developed. The system is achievement-based, which means it's also effort-based. There's no timer working against you, unless you're not building. And here's what that actually means in practice. If you're still average at 30, 40, 50, if you haven't moved above baseline, your value remains low regardless of age. The men who stay invisible at 25 don't suddenly become visible at 35 just because they got older. The country is full of men in their 30s and 40s who've never experienced female interest. Age alone solves nothing. It only amplifies what you already built, or didn't build. But there's a mechanism most men miss. The moment your value starts to rise, you don't just attract more attention. You attract different attention. Women who wouldn't have noticed you at 23 suddenly find you interesting at 32. That shift isn't because you got older, it's because the markers they screen for finally appeared. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Female sexual marketplace value operates on a completely different system. It peaks early. The research puts it around 23. After 27, the decline becomes visible. Not gradual, visible. And it accelerates. The reason has nothing to do with fairness or preference. It's biological. Men are screening for fertility signals, youth, and reproductive viability. Consciously or not, that's the filter. A woman can be accomplished, intelligent, financially successful, and none of it moves the needle the way it would if the genders were reversed. This is where the assumption breaks. Women often believe that building the same resume men build will produce the same results. It won't. Men respect those achievements, but respect and sexual attraction are not the same response. Hypergamy, the tendency to select upward, is a female trait. Men don't experience it. A man doesn't look at a woman's career and feel desire. He might admire it. He won't be aroused by it. What matters for female marketplace value? Youth, fertility, and partner count. Specifically, how low that count is. This is the variable that most directly predicts whether a man will consider long-term investment. The lower the number, the higher the perceived pair bond stability. You can argue whether that's fair, but the pattern doesn't care about fairness. It repeats. Here's the asymmetry. When a woman's sexual partner count increases, her marketplace value drops. But when a man's count increases, his value doesn't rise, because it was already high. Only men with high marketplace value get access in the first place. The logic runs in reverse. Women don't sleep with men to raise those men's value. They sleep with men whose value is already evident. This creates a skewed distribution. Roughly 20% of men attract the majority of female sexual attention. Those men circulate. Women share access to the same narrow band of high-value men rather than distributing interest evenly across the male population. And this operates as social proof. When multiple women pursue the same man, other women interpret that as signal. The attention itself becomes attractive. It's not dissimilar to user reviews. The more women validate a man's desirability, the more desirable he becomes to women who weren't initially interested. This does not work in reverse. A woman sleeping with many men doesn't increase her value to other men, it decreases it. Men don't look at a woman's sexual history and think, she must be exceptional. They think, she's sexually available. Sexual availability and long-term desirability are inversely related in male psychology. The distinction matters because there are two different measurements at play: sexual desirability versus relationship viability. A woman with a high partner count will still generate sexual interest from men. She'll have no shortage of attention. But that attention rarely converts to commitment. Men will pursue her for short-term involvement. They won't consider her for long-term investment. The access is there, the valuation isn't. So you have two separate economies. In one, accumulation increases value. In the other, accumulation decreases it. The crossover point is around 30. That's when male and female marketplace value converges, assuming the man has built something. If he hasn't, his value stays flat or continues declining. But if he has, 30 is when the dynamic flips. His value is rising, hers is falling. She's beginning to feel urgency. He's beginning to feel options. 27 is when that urgency becomes internal knowledge. Women don't always articulate it, but they feel it. The men who used to pursue them aggressively start looking elsewhere. Younger women enter the market. The competition shifts. And the woman who was selective at 24 finds herself competing at 27 in ways she didn't expect. This is when priorities recalibrate. The traits that mattered before, excitement, physicality, emotional intensity, start getting replaced by different screens: stability, willingness to commit, long-term reliability. It's not that preferences evolved, it's that market position changed what's accessible. This is also when women start recalibrating what they're looking for. The traits that generated attraction in their early 20s, physical presence, excitement, emotional intensity, start getting replaced by different priorities: stability, resources, willingness to commit. It's not that preferences changed, it's that the market position changed. What you can attract determines what you prioritize. Men notice this shift. They notice that the women who wouldn't respond to them at 24 are suddenly interested at 32. They notice the younger women who are still in the phase where status and resources matter less than physicality and game. And they notice that committing to the first woman who shows serious interest often leads to regret, because the window of opportunity is just opening, not closing. This is the pattern that creates instability. A man who commits at 30 to a woman his own age is committing at the exact moment his options are expanding and hers are contracting. If he hasn't experienced enough relationships to know what he actually wants, the marriage becomes a countdown to dissatisfaction. He sees attention from younger women. He realizes his value was underpriced. The commitment starts to feel like a miscalculation. That's why the advice exists. Don't marry the first woman who takes you seriously. Experience the market first. Understand what you're selecting for and what you're willing to compromise on. Marriage based on scarcity produces different outcomes than marriage based on choice. The man who's never had options and suddenly gets his first serious offer will often accept it immediately. Then at 32, 33, he starts noticing interest from women in their early 20s. Women who haven't accumulated a decade of relationship history. Women whose timelines aren't collapsing. And the psychology shifts. He starts thinking in terms of what he could have accessed if he'd waited. The relationship that felt like rescue starts feeling like restriction. Now let's talk about what happens after 30 for women. The marketplace doesn't stop functioning, but the terms shift. A woman at 32 isn't competing with other 32-year-olds. She's competing with women in their early 20s who have higher fertility markers and lower partner counts. If she wants a man with options, she's bidding against women who outrank her on the variables men prioritize most. This doesn't mean relationships don't form. It means the negotiation changes. The woman who could have been selective at 24 has fewer options at 32. The urgency increases. The willingness to compromise increases. and the men she's pursuing are often aware of this dynamic, which affects how they calibrate investment. Here's the part that doesn't get said often enough. A 30-year-old woman brings a decade of relational history into a marriage. Men know this. They know that her pair bonding capacity has been tested repeatedly. They know that her expectations were shaped by men she dated when her value was higher. And they know that settling for a relationship later in the curve often means she's recalibrating downward, not selecting upward. This creates doubt, not about her character, about her motivation. Is this choice or compromise? That question doesn't go away. Meanwhile, the same 30-year-old man who's been building value is looking at options that didn't exist 5 years ago. Younger women. Women who haven't cycled through a decade of relationships. Women whose timelines aren't pressing them toward immediate commitment. The optionality is asymmetrical, and asymmetry in a negotiation always shifts leverage. The marketplace doesn't care what you think should happen, it cares what patterns repeat. And the pattern that repeats is this: male value accumulates with achievement, female value peaks early and declines with time. You can resist that framing, but the behavior doesn't change because you resist it. What you do with that information is your decision. But pretending the dynamic doesn't exist won't protect you from it. The market moves whether you understand it or not.